The next performance is by Miss Radhika Punita, a student at Nahan International School. And our final performance is yet another delight by Miss Jyoti Maria Datar and Mr. Vinayak Ghoshal, dance and movement facilitators at Nahar International School. This piece is titled Moving Frames and is an abstract contemporary dance piece inspired by abstract art. Those performances were mesmerizing. Thank you so much to the team of Dance and Movement for putting that together for us. I would now like to introduce our esteemed artists for today, the most valuable members of this fest. Soon, you will see them in a panel discussion, and subsequently, they will be conducting exciting workshops for our students. We are truly honored to have with us a lineup of extremely talented, renowned, and truly scintillating artists from India and abroad. I'm going to give you a brief introduction about them and about the day ahead. First up, we have Mr. Prakash Joshi, who will teach you how to sketch in color traditional Phad figures. Additionally, in Miss Nehal Khedkar's workshop, you will all be attempting to understand nuances of sensorial and emotional experiences generated through art. There will also be a workshop conducted on abstract art by Mr. Abhishek Panchal and shadow theatre conducted by Mr. Prasad Dagre. We will also have a workshop on cutting-edge contemporary Kathak conducted by Mr. Pankaj Sihag. And last but not least, we have a special macrame workshop by Ms. Shalini Mittal. This is only for the teachers of all participating schools as a tribute to them for Teachers' Day. Let us all welcome our esteemed panelists for the discussion today. This session will be moderated by Tanisha Saxena. The other participants of our panel discussion are budding artists from grade 11. Isha, Maya, Kritika, Gayatri, Sia, and Dia. With this discussion, we hope to give all the students an opportunity to get to know the immensely talented artists on the panel and interact with them.
Good evening to all teachers, artists, and students. I am so grateful, I'm sure all of us are, for this opportunity that you have presented to us to get to know all of you. Our first question will be for Mr. Prakash Joshi. Isha, please go ahead.
नमस्ते सर।
नमस्ते।
मेरा सवाल आपके लिए ये है कि हम सबको पता है कि आपका परिवार इतने सदियों से फड आर्ट को करते आया है
जी।
तो आपको क्या लगता है कि फड आर्ट को देखने का नजरिया क्या बदल गया है समय के मुकाम से या फिर वैसे के वैसा ही है? और since your family has been practicing fud art for so many generations now, do you think the perception of how people view fud art has evolved during the times? On to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, fud समय के साथ बहुत चेंज हुई है, उसको देखने का नजरिया चेंज हुआ है। पहले यानी वैसे मैं आपको थोड़ा सा ब्रेक में बता देता हूँ। 10th सेंचुरी से ये स्टार्ट हुई थी फड पेंटिंग्स, और ये वर्ल्ड की सबसे लॉन्ग ट्रेडिशनल पेंटिंग है जिसको परफॉर्म किया जाता है, नरेट किया जाता है। अब टाइम के साथ क्या, पहले जब जो बड़े स्क्रॉल्स बनते थे जिन्हें एज ए बैकड्रॉप टाइप यूज किया जाता था परफॉर्मेंस के लिए, अब इतने बड़े यानी स्पेस नहीं है, परफॉर्मर भी बहुत कम हो चुके हैं, तो धीरे धीरे फिर ये बिल्कुल आर्ट डाइंग होने लगी। जब आर्ट डाइंग होने लगी तो हमने टाइम के अकॉर्डिंग इसको चेंज किया। पहले जो लार्ज स्क्रॉल्स बनते थे, अब हमने इसको छोटे छोटे पीसेस में बनाना स्टार्ट किया, जिसे होम डेकोर के साथ यूज किया जा सकता है। फिर हमने थोड़ा और चेंजेस किया, तो इनको हमने क्लॉथ पे इन पे लेके आए वियर, जिसे आप कुशंस में इनमें यूज कर सकते हैं, आप अपने कुर्ते पे इन पे यूज कर सकते हैं। तो टाइम के साथ हर चीज चेंज होती है और फड में भी चेंजेस आए हैं।
धन्यवाद सर। Just to brief that up for everybody, Sir clearly mentioned that over time everything in general changes, and so did the formation of fud art. Mostly to begin with, fud art started to die out over the time, and hence to preserve the art form, certain adaptations are made, and so yes, fud art has evolved throughout the timelines. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prakash Joshi. Our next question will be for Ms. Snehal. Maya, all yours.
Firstly, good evening, Ms. Snehal. We were curious to know that as people from a country such as India that's known for its rich culture that we often find infuses itself in several aspects of our daily life, do you believe that art is reflective of the culture of its people? Furthermore, do you think art in some ways could work as a mirror to one's background or cultural identity?
Thank you, Maya. Yes, I would certainly agree that art and culture are closely associated with each other. And you cannot deny the implications of current affairs, society, the changes that it is going through in the expression of art, because artists are essentially part of the society. So that is, of course, one way in which we can look at art. But at the same time, there certainly is an individual aspect in a work of art where the artist transcends or goes ahead, goes beyond what he's experiencing. And that is where the magic of art is created. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been very different from news channels or, right? So, yes, art certainly has takes from the society but is reflective, progressive, beyond the society. Sometimes art can also be not related to the society. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I completely agree with you. Art is a great way to express yourself, cultures, and many other aspects. Our next question will be for Mr. Pankaj. Gayatri, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
So, does dance as an art form have an advantage over other art forms? And if so, how?
Definitely, dance has an advantage from other art forms. Yes, I'll say yes, because dance is not just a form, but it's an emotion. You can see it, you can actually feel it by sitting in the last seat of the auditorium. You can still feel what the person is feeling there on stage. And dance does not need any language to communicate with anybody. It's a universal language. Right now, most of you are sitting like this. It's also a dance. So you don't really. So of course there is dance in everything what you do, everything what we all do. Like Miss Snehal is right now just nodding her head. We can say it's dance. Yeah. So of course there is dances everywhere. We all are dancers. We all are born dancers. And so I'll say it's a bit better. It's not better, but it has few advantages. But all the forms are beautiful. Everything is beautiful in this world. And but I as a dancer appreciate more dance. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I do agree with you. Dance is absolutely everywhere. I'm sure all of us love dancing as well.
Thank you.
Our next question will be from Mr. Prasad. Maya, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. We were curious to know that in an ever-evolving society such as ours, where we've seen a plethora of different art movements and art genres over the centuries, do you believe that the role of an artist can be bound by a definition? And if so, do you think the perception of this role has changed over the years?
All right. Thank you for the question, Maya. Good evening, everyone. Has the role of the perception of the role of an artist changed? I will consider like a theater artist for this question. There are many. All of us are artists, like different artists. That of a, I would say over the years it has not. For centuries or since the beginning of performing art or as a theater artist, the role of the performer has remained the same, to stay true to the character that he's performing. In a way, you are pretending to be someone, but at the same time you're being honest. So it's a duality that we are representing on stage. It's a duality in motion as well, you could say. So that throughout time has not changed, irrespective of where society or how society has evolved over a period of time. At all times, artists have stayed true to the character they're showcasing. At the same time, they are also reflecting what the society at that point of time is or has been. In that context, I would like to bring our attention to the title of our fest as well, where if society is light, the artist or the form or the art has been the shadow, and vice versa, right? Depending and given a situation, depending on the situation. So we are in that format we are evolving along with society. So yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think that was a very insightful perspective. Our next question will be posed by Isha to Mr. Abhishek.
Good evening, sir. This question to me would be very personal because I've attempted abstract art in my art and design portfolio and would love to hear your opinion on it. So, since we know that there are two parallels in this world known as abstract and realistic art, so with so much connections around abstract and realistic art, do you think art needs to have a meaning to it, or art has a meaning to it in general?
Isha, first of all, hi everyone. Isha, hi. Thank you for the question. That's a great question, actually, and a very difficult one to put in words and answer. I think there's a very fine line, and most of the artists, I would speak from my experience, they do not, when you graduate out of an art school and when you start become a fine artist, you start practicing. No one decides I want to become an abstract artist or I want to. I would see it as a form of expression rather than as an art form. And in the process, you choose to present your thoughts and way you perceive something, and that perception you're presenting in your artwork, and what is the outcome. So what we tend to do is, your question also comes from the fact that we always see the end product, and then we try to categorize it as an abstract or a realistic artwork. But when I work as an artist, I do not see, if, for example, Mr. Prasad, you're my friend, if I choose to paint his portrait, I can either draw an exact version of him the way he looks and make it into a realistic portrait, or if I know him for years now, as a fact, I can choose to show an evolution of how he's come, been as a human being over the last 10 years or a decade, and that I can add a own version of it in terms of the media, in terms of the choice of my expression, in terms of, so all those small factors, I think, add more element to the abstract form. So yeah, that's how I see it, as a form of expression.
Sorry, should I be expecting a portrait soon?
Yes, Mr. Prasad, sure.
So, sir, I actually had a question for you. How do you, as an abstract artist, connect the two parallels of the world, abstract and reality? What makes you give meaning to your art through abstract art?
So I don't only do abstract art, I also do a lot of realistic art, and I combine both. Now, when I see about realistic art, it's also more of representation, how I want to represent a certain subject. Or we were talking about, I can go back to a panelist, previous panelist who answered about the reality of society. So in an abstract, there is a reason I would choose to do an abstract artwork in my own terms. I want to talk about a subject which has to be more, I want to leave the interpretation to you guys, to the audience. And how I describe it is, when you start mark making in fine art, for example, if you draw a circle on paper, you can have multiple interpretations about it. An abstract art says it is made up of your basic forms, lines, colors, and shapes, right? So that circle for one person could be an interpretation of the sun, while for the other person, it could be a completely different interpretation of a sphere, or for like a wheel. But what I am trying to express is just a circle. There is no interpretation to it. So I think that's a fine line. As an artist, you're constantly, I think, negotiating even when you're expressing and choosing either of the forms. I don't know if that answered your question. So.
No, sir, that was a wonderful answer. I had another one.
Sure.
Does art only cater to the niche? What inspires you? What draws you to abstract art? Is it what you said previously, the perception of others from just a simple circle, for an example?
So most of the work that I do is based on people and stories of people around, like we're talking about the representation of culture. So most of the work that I draw is in the form of people in Bombay and the culture of our country and the place that I grew up in. So most of the stories and the narratives I choose from there. Now, how I represent that narrative is a choice that I pick up between abstract and realism. So most of the people that I draw are realistic, but the stories around that in the work are abstract. So I try to mix both together if I'm supposed to talk about my own practice.
Thank you, sir. I would also love to try that out myself.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This question that I had, does art only cater to the niche? I actually had this question for all of the artists present here. I would like to start by asking the same question to Mr. Pankaj, because personally, I don't know a lot about dance itself, neither contemporary nor Kathak. So
I'll again say that, thank you for the question. So dance caters to everybody. It caters to every single person on this planet. And I call it as a universal language again. And we as a contemporary dancers have the freedom to express through our movements completely without any rules and any regulations. But I'm also a Kathak dancer. I have to follow certain rules and regulations because it's a traditional classical dance form. So combining both the vocabularies, I transfer my emotions to the audience, and I expect the audience also to take the emotions from me. Yeah. So that will be my answer, that dance is not just for a specific people or a specific kind of audience, but it's for everybody, and everybody can understand dance. That's what I feel.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
For Shalini ma'am, I actually had a question on the therapeutic effects of weaving. I personally have not ever tried out weaving, but I think that it's a beautiful craft. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that question. Not only weaving, I think all the fiber arts like crochet and wherever you work with functional movement are very therapeutic. Be one of them. And I think the fact that you're repeating the movement, same thing again and sort of relaxes you when you are in the moment. So I think it really helps you in moments of when you're tense and anxious. Down. Especially with weaving, it's a very rhythmic thing. You just move in a rhythm, just like dance probably. So there's a certain rhythm to the movement when you're doing weaving. So it really, I think it helps. And it's a very, things like weaving and crochet and macrame are very intrinsic have been part of our lives. I mean, our mothers, grandmothers did it without saying it's art. They just did it. And I think it helped them, and it helps us. We are realizing it now. It helps us, settle down, and it has a therapeutic effect on us.
Thank you, ma'am. Follow-up question, actually. This is a personal question of mine.
Sure.
With the way that our world is evolving technologically, do you think that how weaving, it's been embedded into our culture? My mom has done weaving, my grandmother has done weaving. Do you think that this tradition will carry on in the future?
I think it will. With some changes, it will carry on. I think it will. There will be changes, like somebody said that things change with time, but I think it will not go, it's not going anywhere. It's going to be very much here.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we have a question from Mr. Prasad. Does perception limit the expression of shadow theater?
Well, being a visual form of presentation, I think yes, that goes without saying. It also would eventually be, I don't want to say restricted, but subject to the evolution of the audience as well, as to how evolved or how informed the audience is as well. So in that case, from that aspect, yes.
Thank you, sir. For Ms. Snehal, we have a question. History shows art as a reflection of society. If you were to present art as an expression of human society, which form would you choose?
Which form?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you be more clear about it? Like, Are you asking about different forms of art, like visual art, performance art, or are you asking about genres within visual arts?
No, I'm asking the form as in history and human society, like present times and past times.
Oh, okay. All right. If I understand the question correctly, you are saying that which aspect or which part of history truly reflects the society in form of art. That is what you mean?
Yes, and which one would you choose if you were to choose one?
It's impossible for me to choose anything. It will be very, very difficult because every every part of history, if you look at any time in history, it has its own charm. Yeah? But and yes, the art form is reflective even when it is canonical, even when you see that all the artists apparently seem to be working in a very similar fashion, like we have seen periodically in history. You look at Renaissance art, from the word chiaroscuro has comes a little after Renaissance. So we observe for a very, very layman, they can't identify different artworks or different artists from what they see, because a number of artists um, were in a way working in a similar fashion, because that was what was considered to be classical form of that particular time. So even that kind of art represents something of that period. And there are these middle phases where classical is being formed. So if you there's a pattern in which we see evolution. There is a phase when we reach classical, then it becomes stylized, then degradation is not a very correct word, but people get tired of classical, or because classical becomes repetitive, people start experimenting. And experimentation leads to bifurcation of forms in art, and then new art forms emerge eventually. So there is this down, then up, then down, then up, very similar to recurring of fashion that we see. So something which was popular 20 years back has become popular back again today. So there is a recurring of style and form which happens. So we see similar forms being done over and over again in period of history, alternatively. So there is a period when people do realistic, then they do stylization, then they do abstract. At the same time, in the same period, in different parts of the world, people are practicing different art forms. So personally, for me, I prefer to look at art form during the evolution style rather than classical, because that I feel is more spirited. It is a more way art closer to artist expression, because the artist has not limited himself or herself. The final output is not ready in front of the eyes. There is no specific idea of what is good and bad, and we see such fantastic expression. So sometimes the final artworks may seem confusing, and people who have not studied history may find that art to be really not that good. But that is the kind of art which is more closer to the heart of the artist, which I would prefer to enjoy more. If that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. For Mr. Abhishek Panchal, we have a question. What makes visual arts so expressive?
I think I'll follow up on the previous question. You were speaking about who are the arts for. I don't see like an hierarchy for any kind of art form. You speak about theater, you speak about the movement, or you speak about the visual arts. But I think visual arts, for me, they're so special because they're tactile. And when you're engaged into any kind of art form, of course, you are engaging your senses. So visual art is one of the artworks which actually also giving you the feedback while you're engaged with any kind of media or any kind of creation. So for me, I think, and that is something that everyone can enjoy in every capacity that you can think of. So that makes it more special and close to me, I think.
Thank you, sir. We have a question from Mr. Pankaj. How do you combine different forms of dance, contemporary and traditional? Does it not restrict you as a dancer?
Actually, basically I don't combine. I do both in its purest form. So I just play. What I do is basically my reason of learning both the forms is not to combine them completely. Yeah, my reason of doing both the forms is to increase my vocabulary of dance. So how can it restrict me? Of course, it will help me to grow. And so one of my form is Kathak, which is traditionally rooted completely with rules and regulations, gives me solid training, and gives me a punch to follow the rules and regulations which are being made in a certain way. And the other one is contemporary, which allows me to flow, which allows me to fly freely. So of course there is no scope of getting restricted, but creating more vocabulary and moving in a different way, challenging your bodies in a different way. That is the beautiful thing which helps me to dance even better. And for me as a dancer is like basically after a point when you start doing it for years, the form doesn't matter. What matters is what you express through your dance. So what I want to do is I want to express through my body. Maybe it may be a Kathak or contemporary, or maybe something else which directly I improvise. So I think after maybe right now I did it for like past 10 years. I'm doing dance, not Kathak or contemporary. But maybe after 10 years, I don't want to get a tag of doing that I do Kathak or I do contemporary. I want the tag of that I dance, and what people see is dance. So I feel it will be much broader perspective, and there will be no restrictions. That's what I feel. Yeah.
I completely agree with you, sir. Now we have a question for all the artists during this panel discussion. We'll start with Mr. Prakash Joshi. Is it true that if you don't connect with art, no one will? The art that you are doing, if you do not connect to it, is it true that no one else will?
Sorry, speak in Hindi.
अगर आप अपने आर्ट से कनेक्ट नहीं होते तो फिर कोई और भी नहीं कनेक्ट होगा क्या?
बिल्कुल. एक्चुअली क्या ये हमारा फैमिली ट्रेडिशन है. तो फैमिली ट्रेडिशंस में ये है जब तक आप उसको देखते नहीं है, सीखते नहीं है, तो आप उससे यानी कुछ सीख नहीं पाते, कनेक्ट नहीं हो पाते. और दूसरा हमारा फैमिली ट्रेडिशन है, इसको हमें सीखने की जरूरत नहीं होती. हमारे फादर्स, हमारे जो गुरु हैं, हमारे जो फोर फादर्स हैं, उन्होंने कभी हमें सिखाया नहीं. जस्ट उन्होंने कहा है वॉच, आप इसको देखो, देख देख के आप सीखेंगे. और जैसे मैं आज देख रहा हूँ, मैंने सीखा, मेरा छोटा बेटा है वो भी आज उसी वे में आ रहा है. तो यानी जब आप किसी चीज से जुड़ते हैं तो उसको यानी सीखने की जरूरत नहीं होती, आप ऑटोमेटिकली उसमें इन्वॉल्व हो जाते हैं और उसके लिए फिर उसी फ्लो में आप बहने लगते हैं. तो यही है कि जब आप चाहे डांस हो चाहे कुछ भी हो, आज सर के साथ कर रहे हैं, तो ये अगर इनकी भी जनरेशन से अगर कुछ भी देखते हैं तो ऑटोमेटिकली उनके पाँव थिरकने लगेंगे. उसके लिए आपको यानी सीखने की जरूरत नहीं होती.
Just to sum that up, Sir said that he completely agrees with the fact that you need to connect to the art that you are doing, otherwise others won't. Especially since if you connect to the art, you won't have to learn it. You automatically get it. The same question asked by a student is once again for all the artists. So we'll move on to Mr. Abhishek Panchal. Same question for you. If one does not connect with the art, is it true that no one else will?
I think that's a very nuanced question. I think I don't know if I can answer that directly, but I'll put it in a different way. See it as an artist or as a teacher is when you practice any form of art, and I'm talking about the traditional art, performance art, visual arts, you have to be true to yourself about why you're creating it. And every artist or anyone creates it for multiple reasons. Sometimes, like Mr. Pankaj said, you're adding more to your vocabulary as a creative person. Sometimes you're creating something with an intention of putting it out for a performance, for the people, for audience, or for the spectators. Everything is secondary. Your ambitions, making money out of it, Whether people will connect with it or not connect with it, those are not in your control when you are engaged with your creation. And those are that's an afterthought, I feel. So while you are engaged with your, you have to stay true to your intentions. You have to stay true to your grammar. If the grammar is involved with a certain technique, you have to stay true to making sure that you are enjoying the process more than anything. And only I feel more than connection, enjoying the process is more important. And I think if you enjoy the process, you don't have to worry about the outcome, and leave it to the audience. That's what I feel is for them to appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. What about you, Ms. Shalini? Do you also feel the same, or? Ma'am, you're on mute.
I agree with what Abhishek just said, that you have to enjoy it. So I also sort of I've been a teacher, and the teachers here, I'm sure it's also true for teaching. Like, if you enjoy the subject and if you are passionate about the subject, then only it gets transferred to the learner. So I think it's the same with art. Whatever you are doing, whatever you are making, you don't think of the audience or the outcome of it. You are just in that process, in that moment you're doing it. And if you're enjoying it, and if, like others said, if you're true to the grammar, and if you're, if you know what you're doing, if you are into it, then I think others automatically connect. I think that's what I think.
Thank you, ma'am. We have another question from a student. The number of weavers have declined over the past decade. So what makes you say that weaving will continue ahead?
I think number of weavers has definitely declined, but I think we are also realizing it is also a lot of effort is being made to revive that. So there is a hope. I mean, there is decline, yes, but I think there is also a revival which is taking place. And like everything else, it changes. It will not be the kind of weaving that was done maybe many years back. The looms are better, the fiber is different, so things keep changing, but the process of weaving, I don't think is going anywhere.
All right, thank you, ma'am. We have a follow-up question from a student. How can you motivate the youth to take up weaving?
Take up weaving, specifically weaving?
Yes.
I really don't know. I think basically exposure to handwork, and when I say handwork, I'm talking about fiber arts. And there are a lot of curriculums at which include that at a very young level. Like Waldorf systems and Montessori, they include a lot of handwork. They include a lot of fiber art. So they work a lot with thread and yarn and wool. I think it starts from there. So once you're connected with the material, you're connected with the medium, I think there are more chances of you sort of taking it on when you grow up. So I think it needs to be part of the education system. It needs to be part of the curriculum at some level.
All right. I have a question from Mr. Prasad from Aliyah. Do you make your own puppets?
No.
How do you make them then?
Okay. So, so Charu, I think should I clear the misconception? Okay. All right. So I am not restricted to being just a shadow puppeteer or a shadow theater performer, right? In the work that I do, we engage with shadow theater as well, along with your regular theater or other forms as well. Even like movement, we engage on stage. We engage with movement as well. So there's a multiple of forms that we use. Like I use in the theater that me and my group does to present a story to our audience. So yes, shadow puppetry is one of them. And so for example, like we had one production where we had life-size versions of what we were doing on stage, which was in shadow, like an entire UFO and the aliens. So the suits were created by us, not particularly by me, but the cutout of the spacecraft, which was the interior, like what we were trying to show, was made out of wood And at that point, it was many years ago, and that obviously it was quite heavy to transport as well. But yes, those were made by us. And it is one of the sort of a theory with our theater group that the things that we use are as much as possible manufactured or are made by us. Like Abhishek mentioned, the entire tactile engagement with the props on stage, or with the cutout of the shadows on stage, that helps for the artist. It helps to get into that particular story and that particular universe, in a better way. So in that context, yes, we would probably end up making our own shadows, but I do not really make my own puppets.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all panelists for giving us such wonderful insights and opening doors. There's so many interesting topics that I'm sure has left all of us curious. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. So participants, if you have any questions that you would like to ask your workshop leaders, please feel free to ask and discuss the same during the workshops. Once again, thank you so much for this lovely opportunity, and I'm sure that you piqued the interest of many.
Wow, that was such an insightful discussion. Thank you to the artists and students for participating in such an amazing manner. And thank you to the audience for your attention and your very interesting questions. So dear fellow students, this fest is dedicated to you. I would urge you all to make the best use of this golden opportunity to learn, enhance your skills, and above all, get a much bigger and better perspective of art. You are all in for a delightful evening ahead of you. We hope you all have a great time, and we are looking forward to your enthusiastic participation. We will now take a brief break and then start with the workshop planned for the day. Kindly continue to stay on the same link. Our workshops will begin at 5 p.m.
For the artists, you could set up your workshops and join the workshop links that have been mailed to you.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. चलिए
Now you all can speak now. We are offline.
Yeah, we are
Okay,
on.
yeah.
Charu ma'am, Lakshmi here.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. Almost a year now. Since we
Again in
last
Ripon.
met.
Again in Ripon.
Yes, yes.
अच्छा मैम अभी जो होगा we have those are the links for the individual workshops ना?
Yes.
तो मुझे प्रवीण ने दो ये दिया था, एक ओपनिंग सेरेमनी और एक पैनल डिस्कशन परफॉर्मेंस, तो वो दोनों लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग का लिंक था, राइट?